And Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. Hi, Kim.
Hello, Sunny. Never a dull day in the
Never a
world.
dull day. Yeah, well, all this stuff with DEFCON 1. I know the White House, the White Hats at one point were getting everyone geared up for, wait, we're DEFCON 3, we're DEFCON 2, but no one ever really knew the right status. So we are legitimately at DEFCON 1 still?
As of this moment, it was actually finally reverted back to DEFCON 5 today.
Okay.
Yes, probably around 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time. But we're going to talk about a couple other things and then we'll get into that because there's a lot to talk about today. And it's
Okay.
only been 2 days since we last talked. So let's get on with the World Situation Report. Let's talk about the Russian Victory Day Parade.
Okay.
It marks the end of World War II, and it's part of the reason why the propaganda machine began spinning in Ukraine as well. The Russians actually were allies to the U.S. I just want to give that reminder during World War II, and they lost about 25 million Russian lives in the war. Yeah, there's museums and whatnot in Russia that you can visit that talk about the Russians' participation in who actually defeated Nazi Germany allegedly. They put a label on whoever the winner was. In this case, it was the United States, and in a lot of ways, the U.S. did win. What we won was the world's dominating economy in the world, the world's dominant currency, or the US dollar at the time. That moved over from the United Kingdom. This will come up later in our update about finances, from the Bank of England. Many people might not realize this, but the Bank of England was actually acting in the capacity of the Federal Reserve before the advent of the Federal Reserve had been for a long time. So it was kind of like the central bank of all central banks for quite a long time before the advent of the Bank for International Settlements and before the creation of the Federal Reserve. A lot of things changed after World War II. We had the British economy went into a serious depression for about a period of 10 years based on that transition. And this is relative to today because this is what they're trying to do to the United States as they make that transition from U.S. global world economic power to China. Mm-hmm. This is not going to happen this time. They do not have the backing of this office in order to achieve this task. But it doesn't stop the propaganda machines from rolling. Like you said, looks like a duck, acts like a duck, walks like a duck, deny, reassess, blame. They are all wearing black sun symbols all over the place. This whole war is all about just that in the Ukraine. But Russia also has been no stranger to Black Sun infiltration, Black Sun rule, and of course a little bit of Rothschild rule as well under the order of the Red Dragon, which is a Russian organization. So they've all participated. Every country in the world has participated in some way, shape, or form in the order. Now, let's talk a little bit about Zimbabwe. There have been talks, there's been some conference calls and some discussions as to if the United Kingdom is going to perform. Did they actually have the gold to support it? Did they actually hold the liens against the gold of the in-ground assets, as that is the impression of the Zimbabwe government? Therefore, they participated in talks to rejoin the Commonwealth and form a better relation. And then, of course, the good old digital currency. That's where U.S. isn't the only one. They're trying to install digital currency in. But the fact of the matter is they were very nervous and scared to some extent because they could not implement it throughout the country. There was just no way. There's no infrastructure. And there has been no money to Zimbabwe dollar, digital or otherwise, is not a global currency. Therefore, it cannot be utilized to purchase required items to support the infrastructure to launch any kind of digital currency in the country. So therefore, they would have needed money in rand or dollars or euro to be able to do such a thing. And of course, that was not offered, nor was it given, and nor did anybody else get anything from the British crown. But it's having a huge effect worldwide. So as of now, they are going to continue using the current currency, the Zimbabwe dollar, which is on a 1-to-1 ratio at the moment to the US dollar. As they had done in Iraq, they tried to do in Zimbabwe as well and install the US dollar as the currency interim-wise until the country was stable. Mm-hmm. In both locations, it's still currently being used, but due to the sanctions on the country implemented by the Office of Foreign Asset Control, they have also failed to ship new paper currency to the country for quite some time. This has been going on for several years. The bills have become worn, so they had to do something on a 1-to-1 ratio to try for the average everyday citizen to use. Most of the transactions, approximately 75 to 80% of the transactions in the country done by the average everyday citizen are done in physical cash. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of card swiping being done in Zimbabwe, and it'd be a very difficult transition to say the least. But they're not getting any proper guidance from the British in order to make this transition. So they were given proper guidance yesterday, at least on some level, of what a transition could look like and how ultimately the country could be repaired. But it can't happen. You know, the old saying, it's impossible to serve two masters. Well, you're not going to be able to serve the citizens of Zimbabwe at the same time you're going to try to serve the Crown of England, because the two do not go together. Mm-mm. And by crown, I'm not necessarily talking about Chucky, even though he's a representative. I'm talking about Crown Corporation in this instance. Okay, let's talk about Defcon 1. Now, for those of you that don't know and are unaware, Defcon 5 is everything is okay. The world all is right with the world. There are currently no threats against the United States in any way, shape, or form. Defcon 1 usually indicates an imminent nuclear attack, meaning it's already been launched. We're in serious trouble here. It's something that's never happened before in the history of the United States. We got to DEFCON 2, I think, during the Cuban Missile Crisis many years ago. And the protocol that then comes, you know, the doomsday plane goes in the air. If we had a living president, he would be in the bunker. There's probably some guy that went to the bunker. I don't know who that is. And maybe they wheeled the frozen body down there too. I don't know. But there's a whole protocol. Every military base, U.S. military base in the world goes into automatic defense mode. Personnel are moved around, and it costs millions of dollars when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
So what was the reason for it? First of all, there was a phone conversation that was intercepted from Cheyenne Mountain, and it included several other countries. The conversation that was overheard by myself, actually, because all the alarms started going off, and I'm like, why are the alarms going off? That was on the key intelligence and military system. We heard alarms from Langley all the way to various military bases, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. So I finally located the call in which these generals, again, people that should never try to run a country ever, let alone the world, were having conversations with various countries trying to get them also to go to DEFCON 1. And nobody was in agreement with that, so they decided to go it alone and declare it only in the United States. Now, next. There was a second conversation that happened between several operatives and other people that are required to participate when the U.S. goes to a Defcon 1 status. There has to be someone from the White House that enters a code. There has to be someone from usually the Senate Defense Committee or the Defense Arms Committee, I think it's called, that has to participate in this, as well as usually the Secretary of Defense. So they managed to convince all of these people to go ahead and push that button, enter their codes or whatever it is they do, in order to move the U.S. to Defcon 1. They told them all to be quiet and no one was to talk. No one was to speak about it. So, of course, what did Kim do? Kim started making phone calls left and right all over the place. I notified any operative I knew. I notified, of course, Tom, who then tried calling the Pentagon, tried calling all of these different places, but everybody was sworn not to speak unless they had permission from the generals at Cheyenne Mountain.
Okay.
So one funny conversation that Mr. Melville had come from an admiral, and he said, well, I'm not aware of any DEFCON 1. How did Kim find out? Where did she hear this from? That tells me, if the generals swore everyone to secrecy, how did I find out? Well, I have this thing called the Key Intelligence and Military System, and it works really, really well. And even though they tried to affect its abilities yesterday by using some tiny little toy, it didn't work. I still have access to the system. I have access to the base platform. Heck, I built the system. And if you don't think we didn't build in some kind of defense mechanism for little things like that, of course we did, because that's why I'm ground command. But what chaos? And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay, I was just gonna say, what's the purpose of doing this? Don't tell anyone. We're just gonna go to DEFCON 1. What does that do?
Well, that doesn't exactly work real well.
Yeah.
When you go to DEFCON 1, an automated protocol starts to happen.
Okay.
So all of the alerts went out. Everybody's in full-on panic. They don't care, and nobody's talking about it. Well, we'll try to find out why. We'll try to deny, reassess, blame. But it sent the whole country into chaos yesterday for several hours. And the whole purpose behind this was they had gotten an indication from someone, somewhere, that if the U.S. went to DEFCON 1, that the backup systems would automatically come into play. Now, by backup systems, we mean that all of the data and cash in banks would automatically revert to a center in Dallas or in Cheyenne. The control over the Treasury Department or the Federal Reserve would revert to, under military control. That was the whole idea. But not only that, they had an inkling that it was possible that they could regain their system called the Omega system again. Mm-hmm. Now, this, I would say, would have been possible about 2 years ago, maybe 3. With all of the things that we've done and all of the agreements that had expired, there was no possibility of an integration of Omega again or any assistance coming from anywhere. Number one. Number two, the backup systems have been off and revert now to the global repository and have for several months, if not a year. So we had made sure that nothing was going to actually happen yesterday anyway, because these people can't run an operation, let alone try to run the country. But the one thing they are very capable of running is their mouth off. So they had convinced all of Congress before this actually took place, because you got to convince everybody to push these buttons, that if they declared war or if there was an imminent DEFCON 1 type threat against the United States, that money would come out. Of where, we don't know, but it will happen. Right. And so therefore, of course, the U.S. is desperate for money. So therefore, they played along with the game. And then when nothing happened, I was the one that got the phone calls last night, and I had to explain to people why it didn't happen. Didn't they declare war every year on January 1st for 20 minutes was one of the questions. The answer to the question is no. There was a martial law declaration for 20 minutes every year. Why a martial law declaration? Because then it was easy under previous contracts to fund the military directly or any intelligence agency directly without requiring an act of Congress. That's why it was done. This was a legal procedure, and reverting power over to the military under martial law or U.S. martial law would allow for that funding to go to the military, and it took the power of the pen out of the hands of Congress.
Did that happen this past January or no?
Oh, it hasn't happened in years.
Okay.
Did they try this past January? Yes. They do it every year, even though it's ceremonial at this moment. Maybe it's like visiting someone's grave and you could put the flowers there, is kind of what it's like now, because nobody pays attention. It never gets ratified. It's not done. There's been no black budget through the AVIL P4 system. None of this has actually happened. But the most important thing for people to actually understand is the money always came from the alpha system, the trust that I run. In the case of the 20 minutes a year global martial law plan, it went through the Rothschilds or the Order of the Dragon, then on to the military. They were a pass-through. It was not the source of money. Now, at one point in time, both orders had access to different funds. But the filling of the fund itself always came from the alpha system. These were agreements with my predecessor, and the agreements have all expired and they have all run out. So the reason why the military would not get any funding under this scenario, even a declaration of war, is because the contracts have expired. Now, total separate issue, declaration of war. Declaration of war has to do with the old Treaty of Versailles. If there was a declaration of war filed by any country that was a party to the treaty, the money would come out to fund said war to both sides. Most often in the last several years, decades even, it would be the US and X country. Both countries would get money under this scenario in order to fight the war. Why? Because if you're playing a movie or you're in the theater, the villain gets money to play their part, don't they? And the good guy gets money to play his or her part. Right. So it's just a movie. And the movie was funded by both sides. Both sides of the movie were funded. This has not taken place since the expiration of the Treaty of Versailles several years back. So all of that cost the country millions of dollars that they don't have. So that reverts back to your taxes. And you just paid for this giant fiasco orchestrated by a bunch of power-hungry generals that have no hope of fixing this scenario. Now, everyone should pay closer attention. Not everyone is in you guys because you don't have that kind of access, but everyone in the government should pay closer attention to all of the agreements that have expired and all of the new declarations that have taken place. Because they'll give you an indication of the age-old war that has already been fought and already been won. And it's been won by us. So we're not going to go back. We're not going to unwin the war. There's no conceding at this point in time on our side of it. We're just moving on.
Yeah. And
I understand everybody's confused. I do, because this was very confusing. They also likened yesterday because it was, I don't know, they always do things on ceremonial days, end of World War II. Many different events happened on May 9th in history, but they also likened it to the tribulation, the final battle of Armageddon. This goes back to those Philippine people preparing for battle, not just the Filipinos, but all the people in the meeting. Against who? Apparently that would be against us again. So epic failure did cause a lot of chaos. If you're in the military or you've heard about it, this is the reason why, and this is the story behind it. We are not in any way under a nuclear threat, nor was this warranted. The one thing that was under threat was any power or any control that either the Order of the Dragon, coming from the UK, or the Order of the Black Sun had over the United States. So, what will happen to the government? Are they going to realize this isn't going to work? I would tell you as of this morning, not yet. So we're going to go into the financial situation of planet Earth because this does affect you, and you need to know why people thought certain things. So there are three main parties that entered into an agreement probably a little over 10, 15 years ago, after they lost access to any of the accounts and any of the money. They created, after World War II, because this goes back to World War II, they created something called the Lazarus Trinity Agreement. I know.
As in the guy that rose from the dead.
Of course.
Yeah.
They would like to also rise from the dead. Mm-hmm. Yes. So after World War II, and this agreement was formulated between the Order of the Red Dragon, the Order of the Blue Dragon, and the Order of the Black Sun. Later on, they created fake closed-loop systems in computers to reflect some assets, which we finally found yesterday. Yesterday morning, seems like a lifetime ago. And it was kind of the reason why Charles had made promises, and the Order of the Red Dragon made promises, and so did the Order of the Black Sun, because they could see something was there, but it really wasn't there. The management of these three closed-loop systems at one point in time had an agreement with my predecessor to manage those closed-loop systems. Was a company called Qorvo, and it's spelled Qorvo Technologies. So they did believe that one day, the day would come when they would have access to all of the pretty numbers and the metals and various spoils split up during World War II amongst the parties. So we do have a graphic for you. It actually talks about, in this particular one, and hopefully my mic will get this. In this particular one, it actually shows some information on a document which looks like about computers shortly after World War II, and the spoils and the split up of the assets that were acquired during the war. So here's what the document looked like, and there were many like it. These were discovered in a vault, not only in Germany, but in a few other locations that I had been to over the years. This document actually has Bush's name on it. It also has some Asian names on it and some German names, and one of them you may recognize is Hitler. So Hitler's name is on this document. So when they decided they were going to split up, so the document that's attached to this, and it refers to a document and a file, is actually the Lazarus Trinity Agreement.
Okay.
This is what created the Black Book or the Black Eagle Trust. Well, there's the Order of the Black Sun on some tungsten. This is actually an agreement that was done during the World War II. Remember we talked about the funding would come to both sides?
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. Here's Germany and Reichsbank's funding that came out. They actually printed lots of Deutsche Marks off of this. It was actually an agreement to use gold to issue currencies.
Okay.
As agreed, because my predecessor was the one that would have issued such a thing. And this was prior to us having a world connected by computers, which really didn't start to happen until the late 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
So they would make these types of agreements in historical bonds, and you've heard about the German bonds if you've been in the alternate media and the revaluation people. The German bonds would have been issued off of this initial agreement to lend gold to the country of Germany in order to start World War II. Because my predecessor was just as evil as the cabal was.
Mm-hmm.
So the Black Book, that is the cover of the Black Book, which talks about assets in many different locations around the world, to include the United States Open Market Committee. It would also include the FDIC is in there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of gold in there as well. So it looks like a lot of numbers and a lot of jumbled codes and whatnot, but it was all relative at the time. So this was their part to manage. The Order of the Black Sun, or the head of the Black Sun, which would be the Black Eagle position, would have been able to manage these types of assets. This was also the basis for, you've maybe heard of or seen the spiritual white boy accounts. Okay. The spiritual white boy account's main account for all the numbers listed and on all those pages, and you can Google it now because all those accounts are actually listed in there. The Credit Suisse account was the master account that controlled all of those sub-accounts. They were used in the past, many years ago, back in the 70s and 80s, and even as late as 2007, by a lot of the operatives from the 15 militaries, Umbrella Military Corps, and so on and so forth. They were also used by operatives of the CIA. They had been used by operatives in other countries. Whoever was reporting to the head of the Order of the Black Sun at the time would have seen these. Now, if you are an operative and you are watching this, do you remember the days where you would go to, say, UBS in Switzerland and you would give a password and swipe a blank card and you would go and they would hand you a bag of cash? Well, here's where it would come from. It was all coming out of these accounts in the past until they were no longer utilized by March of 2007. This was one section that they had replicated into a false closed loop system that nobody could access, but it was showing on the screen for the last few years as a dangling carrot to get people to do what they wanted them to do. So even though the back system was off, this here was implemented so that they would continue, the access will happen on Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, the RV's happening, Nasara Jasara's happening, all of these things are happening. And this was a way to get people to work for free. And this is
give them leverage.
Yes. Now, most of the people that created such a system are dead and have been since maybe this particular party that masterminded this one did so in August of 2016. So, just before that, I should say, because we had to give the order hope, the three orders that were involved, hope that they were going to gain access to this. Now, next, the second party involved was the Order of the Blue Dragon. So we do have a copy of the Blue Book here. This is important as a history lesson. There's the blue one. Okay, let's go a little bit further in to the blue book, and you'll be able to see as we go through the pages, there's a page in here that actually talks about gold and platinum at the Bank of England. I'm bringing this up now because this relates to Chucky. See, Chucky saw the closed loop system, which was false numbers. It was not real. It's a fake ledger that was created to get people to do what they wanted them to do. So this one here would have been for the entire Commonwealth. From the Bank of England, you would have seen assets such as gold assets registered to South Africa. You would have seen them registered to the United States, and all coming from the Bank of England as the head. Remember, way back in the day, the Bank of England was actually the Federal Reserve when the assets in this book was created. Now, this takes us to our $1 trillion platinum coin. And another question that was asked of me last night on the phone call, can we use silver certificates to rectify this situation that the U.S. is in? We realize we cannot use the platinum because these 3 closed loop systems that I'm explaining to you actually went offline yesterday. So now they know it's not real. It never was real. It was a dangling carrot to get the order to dance, and dance they have over the last several years. So the $1 trillion platinum coin was based on the platinum that was listed in the fake closed loop system tied to the blue book. Now, Chucky had, of course, made all of these agreements that that money was going to come out once he became king, or King Solomon, or whatever he wanted to be. Now, does it make sense to you why people actually believed him?
Yeah.
Why they believed the Order of the Black Sun? Okay. Can we use silver certificates? Let me give you a brief background of silver certificates. In the late 1800s, during the gold rush in the United States, the then president, it was, Grover Cleveland. Terrible. That little song that they make you sing in grade school. Okay. So Cleveland was convinced by Morgan, J.P. Morgan, the original J.P. Morgan, not the bank, the person, that the U.S. was going to run out of gold. Okay. Which was never going to happen. And that they needed to borrow some silver to back the economy, because if the U.S. ever ran out of gold, then it could be like a gold-silver backing for the dollar.
So that was basically just a lie.
That was a lie. So J.P. Morgan, and I think it's John Piermont Morgan, I think it was his name. Double check. Yes, John Piermont Morgan. So John Piermont Morgan then calls his cousin Rothschild and borrows silver from the Bank of England, which was also listed in that book. Then the silver certificates were issued against this. Now I have to tell you this because the Senate Finance Banking Committee was asking about this morning. Can we use silver certificates? The answer to the question is heck no. If you'd like to donate the country back to England, where we started from, then you go ahead and do that. But I'm not going to take part in that in any way, shape, or form. And you don't need silver because we have plenty in the United States. We have trillions of dollars of assets in the United States under BLM. Your little problem is, rare earth minerals, all of it's been leveraged. And I'm the only one that can release the lien and allow you to use it to back the dollar. So is that going to help your current situation? The Senate Finance Banking Committee, I think, is headed by Warner. So as you know, he is an avid Order of the Dragon ally in the U.S. government. Of course, they would put him in such a position, and he still wants to give the country back to England. I know. But I wanted to explain to you the origin of the assets so that you would have an understanding, because this is a great history lesson. Learning a lot today, aren't you, Miss Sunny?
Absolutely.
On how the world really worked. Okay. This also solved another question in my mind as to why are we still talking about Trump bucks in Trump Reserve Bank? Mm-hmm. So during the Trump administration, it was the last time that I personally assigned the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund over to a president. I did not do it this time because I have given up on the U.S. government. Now, that takes us to the Red Book. If you have a second, you can bring that up. That's the one with the presidential seal on it. And one of the first accounts, although in the book itself, it's registered under John F. Kennedy because that's when it was originated. All right, so the first page is the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund, which is assigned upon the inauguration of each U.S. president since the 1960s. Those of you that are aware, John F. Kennedy actually made a deal with his fellow Black Sun partner, Sawarno, called the Green-Hilton Agreement, to give gold to the Treasury of USA, not the Department of Treasury, in order to have him achieve the position of Order of the Black Dragon and King of North America. That was his plan. He wanted to overthrow Bush. Then another thing you may or may not have seen is the $3 bill. You know, there's a joke about it. Don't pay me in $3 bills now, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, the Federal Reserve had the contract to print ones, fives, tens. So Kennedy decided to issue threes. And the CIA still has pallets of $3 bills in their asset portfolio, which I would love to wallpaper my bathroom with someday. But but that was the end result. And then because the Federal Reserve contract was still in effect, all of the assets in this book actually went over to the Federal Reserve, and Kennedy was shot. Mm-hmm. So the Red Book has become synonymous with the Order of the Dragon and assets that were under its management. And they were the third party in the Lazarus Trinity Agreement, and was also had a fake closed loop system showing that the backup assets of the United States, you know, they talk about the fund, the emergency fund of each state that they have, and all of that is in this book as well. So they could see it, but nobody could touch it. Now, unbeknownst to myself, Trump actually took the portion of our conversation when I assigned because it was all in the diplomatic line, so it's all registered in the National Archives that I had this conversation. I made the reassignment. I showed him how much money was in there. This was done during Hurricane Michael, and it was meant to help the United States. I told him that I was the second key, but he could initiate a request from this during a national emergency, which is what it was for. And at that time, we had an emergency. He never, ever used it for that purpose. Never. But he wove that sheet around, getting everybody to work for him for free. We could call him Bush Jr. because Bush was the master at that. But my predecessor was, where do you think they all got it from? Yeah. So he started waving that tear sheet of the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund around to every operative under the sun for years. And this was done, I don't know, 6 years ago, back in 2018.
Mm-hmm. I remember, Ken, does this have anything to do, like in the beginning, when Trump first took office, he did like this whole tour of like the world basically, and allegedly the White House were like, oh, he's getting everyone on board to defeat the bad guys. those travels, did that have anything to do with him waving his paper, going, look,
Oh, yes.
look. Okay.
Trump bucks, the reserve
Yeah.
currency of the world. That's where they kept registering it because they thought that was real.
Okay.
No, all of those fake closed loop systems were created in order to get the orders, plural, to dance around the world.
Okay.
Sanctions on Russia, sanctions on this, sanctions on that. All of this stuff why people did the things they did is because they thought they could get access to these accounts.
Right.
They thought their other counterparty had access to these accounts, but nobody did. And they weren't real accounts. It was just fake numbers on a ledger, no allocation numbers behind them, nothing. It was all for show, just like they used those cash pallets since the 1970s that Bush Sr. printed. $27 trillion in fake money made the Iranian Shah fall, caused Desert Storm. The Saudis still have all those pallets. They can't cash them in. Money makes the world move. There's only two things that will change the entire world all at once. Number one, an act of God. Mm-hmm. Number two, money. And so the whole orders plural, have been dancing based on fake numbers that were created by my predecessor that I had just found in their super secret closed loop systems and eliminated yesterday.
Gotcha.
So I wish that the Senate Finance Banking Committee would actually call me directly and ask me these questions, because I can give them the entire history, how it came to be, what the bonds were, why were they issued, what was these closed loop systems, why can't we see them anymore? I can tell you everything, and if it comes out of my mouth, it's the honest to God's truth to the best of my ability as I know it at that time. There's always new things that are popping up here and there that we find, but this was another one. So part of the reason why they hit the Defcon 1 button yesterday is because they saw all these things disappear. And they thought they could get them back and get control of them if they pushed the button. Oh, geez, I know. Little knowledge is dangerous. I will repeat myself. Little knowledge is dangerous. Little knowledge causes major chaos, doesn't it?
Can I ask a question about the Defcon 1? So if someone pushes the button, I know they were trying to keep everything hush-hush. I'm wondering what the media's role was in this, if they knew anything at all. Like, I would assume it would have to go through the military, and that's where they're like, everyone just keep quiet about this. Mm-hmm. Or is there any information that the media, were they complicit in hush-hush, or do you think they just didn't even know?
Normally, under the normal protocol, the emergency broadcast system, which is also a backup system, would have gone off, and it would have warned the citizens of the country. So due to the fact that that was disconnected from that system, it didn't go off. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, the media most likely would have received a memorandum shortly after the Defcon 1 alarm went off, because yes, they would have also normally received an open line to the media to give real-time reports to keep American citizens safe, allegedly. That did not, was followed up with another message that went out that said, this is only a test. We are testing, running a military drill. This is only a test.
I see. So something did go out, and then a follow-up went out. Just kidding.
Yeah, just kidding. Don't worry. You remember when I keep thinking about that. Always makes me think about during the Cold War, and I'm a little kid in elementary school, and they're like, get under your desk. Right. It always that's what I felt like was happening yesterday. I'm like, what is going on? Wow. I'm looking around, I'm like, everybody's in a full-on panic, and and then the message came through about Defcon 1. So yep. So the reason why I pointed out all those assets, because it's directly related to the actions that are being taken by the US government right now, by the US deep state right now, by the British Crown, and so everybody needs to be informed that these accounts, number one, no longer exist. in the real system. They do not exist. They have been reallocated accordingly and respectively to not the government at this moment, because there is no contract with the government, anywhere, any military, anywhere, which is the reason why no money comes when there's war. I am now in charge of the asset base, and I am in charge, and I have been for a long time, and I have been in charge of the issuance of new allocation of every currency in the world. That is part of my job. It's not all of my job, but it's part of my job. Therefore, the best that they have to offer us is they were blocking us in computers. So they know that my only outstanding agreement is with you, the 8 billion people in the world. It is not necessarily through governments. It's not, I don't have any agreement that says I have to do that anymore. The agreements are directly with you. So that being said, they've given one hell of a fight when they were able to fight. Whether it's the NSA or it's it's been a battle for a long, long time. And now we are not battling them anymore. We're battling old, very old agreements that were not between governments, that between groups like the Abraxas and dead man switches from that type of stuff. And even that isn't successfully entering into the actual system. So it's around the system. There's been a little bit of reprogramming that's had to take place due to the existence of these fake closed loop systems and a few other things. But, we're actively working, I promise you, 10 to 15 to 18 hours a day, trying to get it all cleaned up as quickly as possible. And I do believe we are there. Little incidents like yesterday do nothing but kind of waste a few hours of my time.
Okay.
But it did lead us to find out why people thought they could do Trump bucks, because Trump had people issuing when he was around and alive. Now the Trump operatives still believed that money was there for them, and they really thought they were all going to get paid that money. But that money was the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund, and it only is good as if the president is actually in office.
Whoops.
Yes. Then it reverts to the next president.
Okay.
So it's actually my fault for not re-registering the next president, because that's really what should have actually happened. But I just gave up. I didn't even think about it, honestly, ever again until yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't reassign that. I mean, I'm not going to. I don't have to now. Don't have any agreement, don't have any contract. Even the 10-year extension is gone. So, I don't know. Sonny, you want to be on the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund? I mean, we could put anybody there. No?
No, that's all right.
No? Anybody, anybody? Yeah, no, I'll probably, the account itself is gone anyway, most recently. So all of the money, where did the money all go? Where did all the platinum go? Where did the rare earth minerals go? Again, I will repeat myself. It has been divided amongst all of the citizens of the respective nations to which they were allocated to in the first place, in preparation for the citizens to self-govern, because at this point, you guys kind of are not doing anything. And you're kind of looking a little silly because you're still listening to the Order of the Dragon and the crazy people in Cheyenne, and you're not really going anywhere at all. You're driving operatives around in circles. You're waving fake tear sheets around. Tear sheet, by the way, is a bank statement in the world of high finance. So they're waving fake bank statements around, saying that Trump bucks are going to be worth something, and you're trying to get operatives to promote it everywhere. And if Trump comes back into office, maybe he can't access it because he's not in office.
No, there's always something.
Yeah, maybe that's why. So if we get him back in 2024, we're going to promise all of Congress that all this money will become available. The other whoop-de-doo that was attempted to happen was McCarthy. They wanted to take Biden and Kamala out and put in McCarthy before the election. And McCarthy initially agreed because he thought he was going to get access to the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund and he could fix the country. Well, when that didn't happen yesterday, he abruptly announced he's never going to run. He doesn't want the job. Yep.
Until next week when he changes his mind because someone else promised him something else.
Well, eventually they're going to run out of fake tear sheets and fake closed loop systems and fake things to flash around and promises that never come to fruition because eventually the bill comes due. And this may happen even before June 1st now.
Right.
If the government goes bankrupt, what happens to you? Nothing. What are they doing? Okay, so maybe you can't renew your driver's license at the DMV.
Aw, darn
I
it.
know.
That's such a fun process.
Well, most of that stuff, those are federal departments, but, they'll probably set up something at the police department because that's a state department, not a federal department. If the federal government went belly up, how is that going to affect you? In any country. This isn't just the U.S. It doesn't.
Right.
And
I think people would be concerned initially because they think the military needs to protect them, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably what a lot of people would think is that, oh no, Russia's going to come do whatever, China's going to do this to us or whatever if we don't have our military.
Yep. But I guarantee you there's probably several 100,000, if not millions of patriots that would step up and take the job if they didn't have to listen to the crazy generals and the corrupt admirals and all of those people. I guarantee you there would be many that would step up and take the job. No. The military really hasn't protected U.S. citizens like ever. The same thing, the interesting thing that would be coordinated is the biggest would fall first. So you'd have the U.S. fall, the U.K. fall, China's already fallen, and you'd have Russia fall. If they don't fall under the new plan and make an agreement and negotiate, and how are we going to play this game together? So with all of those down, who's the threat?
That's true.
They don't.
But isn't it more like, because what would the media do, right? The media would just be spreading fear everywhere, right?
Well,
So it's more the perception as opposed to what's really going on.
25% of the media money is made from sponsors and commercials and all of those types of things. And since the ratings are down, they can't sell, your ratings. The reason why they're so important to a media organization is because your television ratings and the amount of people that are watching is directly related to the cost of airing your commercial during said show. And with the ratings being way down of CNN and all the major BBC and all of these news channels, because nobody believes them anymore, then the cost of the commercials goes down because you're not paying to have the audience. That's how marketing works. Now, on the flip side of it, 75% of the income for the CNN. Whoopsie.
Well, what? Is there a difference, really?
No, there isn't. For the CIANN, it comes from, we'll just blur them together. They're the same. 75% of that comes from governments and black budgets.
Wow.
So to answer your question, we better up our game here on UNN because well, everything has a cause and effect. And when you're in a position such as mine, you have to analyze the what ifs on every single scenario. And right now, they're scrambling to try to maintain ownership given away to the Order of the Dragon or the Order of the Black Sun. Even members of the Senate Finance, the Banking Committee, are trying to make sure that the Bank of England maintains control over the United States. So with that mentality, do they know they're doing it? Or is the order scrambling to give them fictitious assets when their fictitious closed loops went down, fictitious assets to try to do something?
There's
You
just so
know,
many lies. Do you know what I mean? Fictitious is another word for lie. It's like, oh, let me lie with another lie to,
yeah.
to keep the ball rolling. It's so frustrating.
Well, exactly. See, and that's part of the reason why I started this news channel was, I mean, it was not only for you guys, but it's also for the world because they're being lied to constantly.
Yeah.
They're running operations on lies. And if they just asked, if they just sat down, trust me when I tell you, it would be worth a few hours of your time to sit down and learn the truth. And I can prove it. Bring a treasury terminal with you. I'll turn that on. I'll let you verify everything I'm saying while I'm sitting there and talking. I've done this before with other people that were questioning. So the status of the financial world, so to speak, everybody's doom and gloom. The world, we're all going to die. The country's going to crash. There's going to be a near-death experience in the United States. Oh, God, if I hear that one again.
I know, seriously.
The only thing that's dying is them and their followers.
Right.
That's it. You can see the White House like teetering on the edge of a cliff right now. Mm-hmm. Are they going to pull it back and make a change and deal with us? Mm-hmm. Or are they going to just keep pushing it off the edge with another fake bank statement? The operatives run the politics. Period. End of story. And I know that they were here several days ago, and I told you about this, and they got an earful. A lot of those were the operatives that run D.C. and the White House, and they're really angry. A lot of this had to do with nothing happening after the coronation. So people are starting to ask questions. The problem is they don't like the answer, and they go deaf. Yeah. So that being said, that is the current state of the world's financial system and why it's all happening, what's going on behind the scenes, and where we could go in the future. Will they take down more banks in order to keep themselves alive? They will eat their young to keep themselves alive. They will, you're probably safest, if I had to make a guess, is the orders babies are your tier 1 banks. Okay. So they will be the last to fall. I'm not saying make a run on all your community banks or anything like that, but if I were to make an assessment based on the analysis of who the Federal Reserve is eating and who they're trying to keep alive, they may consolidate them, like they did in the case of UBS and Credit Suisse, But I don't see them, I see them being the last. They won't eat the golden children of the order. Right. But now this brings us to another problem that I haven't yet analyzed either. Looking at those books that I just showed you, you see Credit Suisse in there, you see UBS in there, Barclays is in there, Deutsche Bank is in there, all of the top tier banks are in there. Were they also counting that money on their balance sheets too?
Oh boy. Yeah.
And even that wasn't enough because they could see it, they just couldn't use it.
So basically, are they actually worse off than they even think they are?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And they can't keep pinning their hopes on the fact that you can hit the Defcon 1 button and money will fall out of the sky. Yeah. Stop.
Yeah, that obviously doesn't work.
No. But we'll leave the light on.
Are you Motel 8 now or 6 or whatever that is?
I'm their last choice. I'm a motel of last resort for most travelers. So there you go. We can equate it to that. We'll leave the light on because I am the last place I'm over here, I've got everybody's flags in my hands and I'm waving them and I'm like, yep, we'll be happy to help.
Yeah.
There's no more lies to tell. It's over. On one more note, the victory agreements have all come out. There's been many declarations from source in the last several days. I call them source agreements because they come from the ninth density. They've all been registered in the archives, in the Hall of Records, that we, victory after victory after victory over this and that, and new privileges given on our side of it, more command, so to speak, over certain things. The liens that were being, how do I say this? The lie being perpetuated by the gold, the platinum against countries like Zimbabwe, South Africa, all of those lies have disappeared. Now they can see the truth, that it's all in the repository for those respective citizens of those respective nations. If the government chooses to participate, that would be great. If not, we're okay. We'll be fine. May get rocky, may be very confusing for the average everyday person that has no idea what we're talking about, but we will be okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything else to report with the Silent Circle?
They're motoring right along, picking up various companies and other things they consider to be assets from people that own them. They have been trying to stave them off with the coronation, as far as takeover of the U.S. and of the Treasury's buildings. Mm-hmm. I think that they too probably had their jaw dropped when they found out all of those closed loop systems too weren't real.
You're talking about the Silent Circle.
Mm-hmm.
Their mouths probably dropped as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were, that was the dangling carrot to get the money from them as well. So, and they kept showing them fake bank statements and whatnot, saying, "Oh, look, this will be out after Chucky's coronated, or when we declare Armageddon and Tribulation Day, war against the office of the Guardian, war against the devil, or war against this, or." Was it Jesus and the Antichrist were supposed to fight the final battle of the tribulation in Megiddo? So, they, claim that there's going to be an event of this, of that a day, victory day, but now that lie has permanently gone away. So I'm sure they were a little bit taken aback. Perhaps they thought the house came with the asset, but it doesn't. They know that that I have that control. They've watched me transfer money out of those accounts before, including the Emergency Presidential Liquidity Fund. But I am the key. So yes, the President of the United States can initiate a request in the event of a national emergency, but it doesn't help you if I don't agree.
Right.
It was always a joint fund. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up the financial update and the World Situation Report for Wednesday, May 10th.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Lots of good info.
Thank you, Sunny.
That wraps up our news update for Wednesday, May 10th. Please share UNN with your friends.